I think we made our policy pretty clear pre-season, and today I suppose it's a line in the sand, and it shows that we're fair income about the policy and how we'll police the policy. And by and large, I've been very impressed with the clubs, with the coaches, with the trainers, with the doctors on how they've applied the concussion policy this year, and and that's a good thing. And as I've said a number of times to all of you, player safety is at the forefront of the decisions we make, and that's evidenced by our decision today.
Todd, tell us about the exact nature of the breach with regards to the Josh Jackson issue.
I think in simple terms, if you look at the policy, it's our view that it wasn't complied with by the Bulldogs at that particular moment in the game. And our view was that he should have been taken from the field.
And so you think he should have been taken from the field and off for the rest of the game?
That's not what the policy is about. The policy is designed to take players and place them in the care of the person who's the most responsible, which is the club doctor. And that's the whole concept of the policy, is it gives teams the opportunity through their head trainers to take players off to be assessed. And then it's up to the doctor. The person who's most qualified inside a stadium on the day of a football match is the doctor, and he should be responsible for those decisions.
Todd, round two's a fair while ago. How come it takes so long?
I think what that would be evidenced by is the amount of work we do to make decisions like this. They're reasoned decisions, they're made on facts, they're made on information supplied to us by the club, by their trainers, by their staff, by the SCAT assessment tools available by the doctors. So we're not going to rush decisions, we're not going to do them in anybody's time frame other than our own.
Todd, the Bulldogs are saying that their trainer at the time was attending to another player and he didn't see Josh Jackson was that use. Should the referees maybe have stopped the game and said, is it a bad way?
I think if you look closely at this incident, the referees did stop the game.
Are the Bulldogs also being looked at over the James Graham one still?
I've said today in the release there are a number of other issues that are ongoing for us to look at. I won't talk specifically about clubs or players or issues. I haven't from the beginning of the season. I don't intend to now. I don't think that's fair to the clubs who have asked questions of, and we've asked several of them, and some of those we've been very satisfied with the responses. But we will continue to monitor the policy as it was designed to do. And if and when we see issues that need to be confronted, we'll confront them.
You suspended half the penalty, but if there is another one, what happens then?
Then that other part of the penny will be imposed.
As well as additional?
Yes.
5 other clubs, please explain, notices the Bulldogs this one. Are the clubs taking it seriously?
I think they are taking it seriously, and I think you can see that through the numbers over the first 5 rounds. I congratulate the clubs. I genuinely congratulate the clubs for the first 5 rounds in the way they've applied the policy. I've been delighted to see certain players in games where historically they wouldn't have been taken from the field, that under the policy they have been. And what that means is they're being assessed by the club doctor at the time. And that is very fundamentally different from other seasons. This is the first time the game has had a policy on concussion, the first time in its history. We shouldn't underestimate the importance of this and of getting it right. We'll continuously look at the implications of it. We'll continuously pressure test it with a range of stakeholders, players, clubs, coaches, all of our doctors, to make sure we get it right.
So far you've had, your release says you had 27 incidents, 13 players were kept off the field for the rest of the match. Is that more than you expected in 5 rounds?
Look, I'm not sure if we ever had any expectation on what this would look like. What we can do is turn to other sports around the world and compare some of the data, but we're 5 rounds into doing something for the very first time. We've been very transparent on the numbers. The fact and evidence by I'm standing here today talking to you about our policy for the first time demonstrates that. We'll continue to look at it, but I'll continue to say the same thing. We must put player safety at the forefront of our decision making, and that's clearly what we've done with this policy.
Have you made a resolution to the other 2 incidents from round 2 with Penrith and
They're both closed.
So you're pleased that?
Yes.
Are you surprised at your former club, Todd, that has been breached?
Oh, I don't think it's got anything to do with a former club of mine. I'll make decisions based on irrelevant of the colours of the jerseys, and that's what I'm in charge to do, and that's what I've done on this occasion.
Todd, determining whether there's a breach, are you allowed to ask for the results of those SCAT tests, etc., etc.?
Not only do we ask them, as part of the concussion policy, they have to be forwarded to us.
Yep.
And we've also, in this model, asked for additional statements from club doctors, from head trainers, and we've done a thorough assessment on it, and this is our decision today.
Todd, you talk about player safety. At the moment, a lot of people in the game are confused about lifting. Where's the NRL at with that?
First thing I'd say to you is that we won't make any rash decisions without facts and data in front of us. It's very important people understand that we will assess the risks in the game, we will assess information, but we simply won't make decisions on fundamental decisions to change rules without all of that information available to us. We will work on that diligently like we have done on a range of other issues. It took us 6 months to pressure test a range of scenarios for the rule changes we made this year. We will apply the equal amount of critique on that before we make statements.
What do you
When's
make
your
of the
rules
Melbourne
committee
Storm?
next, mate?
Our rules committee, our competition committee will meet at the back end of next month.
Todd, what do you make of the Melbourne Storm questioning the consistency on the lifting rules? Is it in good taste? Is it fair enough?
Oh, I think every club is entitled to ask questions, so we've got no problems with that. And let's face it, the game's been around for 100 plus years and there are always questions asked of different various issues in the game. And you know, the match review panel and charges on gradings will continue to be debated. There's no question about that. The important part people need to understand is the match review committee are independent. They're made up of very experienced former players who are there to discharge duties according to the rules. You won't always agree with the decisions they make, but the process is fundamentally correct.
Todd, do you feel like the game's undergoing a bit of a cultural shift this season?
I'm not sure if you call it cultural shift. I think we've got to continue to evolve. I think we've got to continue to innovate. And the game should be very proud of itself in that it can stand up and change the way it does its business fundamentally, but it will only do that when it's got the research and data available to it. We must continue to make reasoned and measured decisions on that information. And that's what we're doing.
Do you think you'll have any course for independent doctors on match days?
Again, we've got a concussion policy at the moment that puts great ownership on the doctors of the clubs. And I've said this again before, that those club doctors are the most qualified to act. They don't report to the head coach, they report directly to the CEOs and the boards of their clubs. That was a governance change we made last year. Those doctors, if they decide to do something against the policy, put their professional reputations on the line. And we haven't seen any of that. We've seen the doctors act with great care for their players. I've addressed all 16 club doctors personally and I've been delighted with the way they've handled themselves this year.
So is this fine a black mark against the name of the doctor, the Bulldogs doctor?
No, I think you've got to be really careful what you're saying there, because if you look at the breach notice, it's about the player not being taken from the field. That has nothing to do with the club doctor.
Is there an opportunity for appeal now, or can you explain the process now that you've issued a breach? What happens from here?
Yep, that's right. There is a breach notice, so the club has 7 days and it's more than entitled to bring back more information or additional information for us to consider before a final penalty is imposed.
So what about players that just refuse to come off? How do the clubs handle it, or how do the trainers handle it?
Well, that's a real challenge, and again, this is part of our learning under the policy, but what I would say to you, and be very clear on it, is that it's not the player's decision, and the players aren't best equipped to make those decisions. It's the people who are there to care for them and provide their level of support that are best equipped to make the decisions. And if that means telling players that they need to come off, they'll come off. And that's really important that players understand that. Culturally, that may be part of the shift. But I've said before that it's no longer a badge of honour for a player to be taken a head knock and then try to take the next hit up. No longer can that be acceptable for us in a game. And that's what the policy is designed to take on.
So there's breach notices for clubs. Does that mean players could potentially feel the ire of the NRL as well?
Well, that's something for clubs to talk about to their own player group, and it's also up for players to stand up and understand for their teammates, because again, we're not going to put player safety at risk, and this is a very important part of the game. We've got to make sure that we put the players first, and sometimes they're not equipped to make those decisions themselves. That's why we have staff around them.
Todd, the other 5, please explain. Are they similar situations of players not coming off, or are there some other situations you can explain?
Oh, there are some other situations. You know, every week we look at every head knock from every game, and then we'll assess that, base that against the policy, and if we determine we need more information, we'll ask for it. We've done that on a number of occasions over the first 5 rounds. It's taken several weeks for us to finish those investigations, but again, we'll do it in a reasoned approach, and we'll do it with all of the information available to us. And we'll do it all year. We'll do it every week, and we'll do it after every game, because it's important that the policy is applied.
Do you think coaches still apply pressure, or do you think the message has got through to them?
Oh, I think it's pretty clear the message is right through all 16 clubs. And I started this, and I'll finish it by saying the same thing. I think the clubs deserve great praise and some credit for the way they've applied this policy. There was a lot of people when we announced this that thought it would be rorted by the clubs and the coaches. And I can say fundamentally I think they've done a wonderful job in supporting the measures that are in place. The people out there inside these clubs want their players protected, and I think that's evidenced by the work that's been done in the first 5 rounds.
So just to clarify, the 5 please explain, 3 have now been resolved, or are there 5 more additions and 3 that
No, there's just still a couple outstanding for us to look at, but we've closed the book on a couple already.
So how many have you got outstanding?
I think we've got 3 outstanding.
Todd, with the lifting tackles, is it why you won't rush into changes? The players are saying they want more clarity. Surely that's a concern for you as a rule maker, the NRL, that they're saying we're confused.
Yeah, I don't know about confused, but first thing I'd say to you is I don't think anybody can tell you categorically whether there are more or less lifting tackles from last year to this year. And the reason no one can tell us is we haven't analysed the data yet. We're doing that as we speak. We'll analyse information as it comes available to us. But, you know, we're not going to take innuendo or comments from players on the run. We will only act with the facts in front of us. And when we do that, we've shown you across the time that we will make change where we think change is needed to be made, but we'll only do it with the information available.
Is it possible that there'd be change within this season, or would it be waiting till the end of the year?
Oh,
if
look,
the data's there.
if the information's available to us, we'll look at it. But I'm not going to put a time frame on it. Whether it's this year or next year, I can't tell you. But we are not afraid of making change. We're not afraid of making hard decisions. Sometimes those decisions will prove unpopular with certain parts of the rugby league community. But if player safety is at the forefront of the decision we make, we'll make it.
Do you believe there's been inconsistencies with some of the gradings of the lifting tackles in the last couple of years?
Oh, I can understand why people sometimes get frustrated by it. I said at the beginning here that for 100 years, match reviews and judiciary charges have been debated, and I expect them to be debated for the next 100. And it's sometimes difficult for people to understand that, but I'll go back to what I said before. We have a very independent process made up of former players with great experience, and they're there to discharge duties and try to do it in the best available capacity. And they're doing that. They're not going to please everybody, and not everyone's going to agree with them.
Todd, how do you guard
Do you
against...
speak to them regularly? Do you speak to the match review?
Well, they're in this office on a Monday morning reviewing the 8 games over the course of a weekend. And we speak to them regularly, absolutely.
Todd, sorry, how do you guard against pressure being put on doctors during the course of games? What sanctions are in place to deal with that if that comes to light?
Well, doctors have a very important part in clubs. They're there to maintain the safety of their players and their athletes, and that's been demonstrated this year by the level of care applied that almost half of the players that have come off haven't returned to the field. And that's telling me that doctors are putting the players inside their clubs first. That's a very, very important distinction to make. Something that hasn't been applied over the last number of years because we didn't have a policy. We now do have a policy and we're enforcing it.
Is it right Melbourne Storm have said they're not appealing Jordan McLean's suspension?
I haven't heard from Melbourne one way or the other. I think they've got till tomorrow to make that decision.
Have you got any updates on Alex McKinnon from an NRL point of view?
All we know from our last discussion with the Knights is he's returned to Sydney. And again, we've been saying regularly that we've been in contact with the Knights and his family daily and offering our support continually to him and his family as he goes through this situation.
If there were repeat offenders with concussion, mate, would you look at stepping in and removing the people that were involved? Would they be out of the game, or what would happen?
The sanctions available to us under the policy are wide-ranging. It can range from fines like we've issued today to registration of staff through to loss of competition points. We've made a clear decision today on a fine, a monetary fine, but there are wide-ranging sanctions available to us, and we'll take those if they're appropriate.
So just in relation to the judiciary, as it stands, they're allowed to take into account the severity of the injury. Are you comfortable with that in terms of the precedent set, and is that something that you guys are going to review going forward?
Well, it's been in place for a number of years. It's a basic principle and premise of the NRL rules, as it is across the justice system, that the penalty will be considered in the application in relation to injury. It's been there for a long time, and the judiciary the other night discharged their duties according to the rules, and they did that.